looks a little
All
backwards.
right. Well, we will call to order the October 7th meeting of the Community Preservation Commission. Our first order of business is to review and approve our minutes from September. Did everyone have an opportunity to look at the minutes? Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I wasn't present, so I'm just going to abstain.
And I didn't get a chance to look at them, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Those who don't wish to abstain, any in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 2 abstentions.
3.
Okay, so,
Abstentions.
so 3 abstentions and 6 yeses?
So many cool things last month.
5.
I saw the video. I saw the video.
Perhaps evidence.
Okay.
All right, the next order is to review and sign the bills. Are there any bills?
None this evening.
We could skip that. We're gonna get through this. The next action item is the project funding request. Chris, did you have an update on that for us?
I do, thank you. So after the last meeting, the committee asked us to go back and take a look at, a budget of around $500,000. I did sit down with staff, and we did discuss the provisions for that. From that discussion, our recommendation this evening is going to be to continue with the project as drafted. We do understand and recognize the budget amount is significant, but this project, as designed and as developed, we find it to be substantially in line with the operational goals of our community, both in relation to ADA accessibility and other maintenance goals. And so we think that this is the appropriate investment for this park in this area. We have seen challenges when we've reduced projects in the past or otherwise redesigned them without providing the full investment to do the project right the first time. So our recommendation is to do that. We are going to be asking that we go and continue this to the May town meeting. What that will allow us to do in that span of time is to review and provide some additional community input, community engagement opportunities to discuss this project in more detail in that lead up to the May town meeting. And will also allow us to review if there's other funding sources that we can do to lower the cost burden on CPC. I can't guarantee that we will find that funding source in a short amount of time, but we will do what we can to identify if there is an opportunity to do so. So the ask this evening would be that we still want to have discussion between now and May, and we're happy to have that discussion with the committee, but at this time we're recommending that we move ahead with the project as submitted.
Okay. Are there any questions and comments at this time? We can certainly wait until we're closer to the May town meeting to take a formal vote, but if there's any information anyone would like from planning office or Mr. Esposito, they're here.
Does moving ahead entail, like, drafting conceptual plans?
Yeah, so we have the conceptual designs, and it's the full project scope is drafted. We had kind of talked a little bit about the bidding process and how that's the full amount of the project. We hope that expenditures may be a little bit less. So with this project amount, we may potentially be able to return funding if there are cost savings that are realized during the implementation of the project. We've seen that with a couple of our projects as we're closing the loop on those, that some money is coming back to the committee through those processes. But at this time, we think that it is designed substantially in accordance with our operational needs. So it's really just public engagement around what we're proposing.
Jason, you had a question or comment?
Yes, a few things. One is, has this gone before Parks and Cemetery for their comments, and what was the census there, given cost, maintenance, prioritization?
They did, well, I think Kevin has, deemed it a priority and has no issue with the maintenance or costs associated with maintenance. I speaking incorrectly, Kevin? Yep. And the commissioners on the Cemetery and Parks Commission have, given their backing to this project.
And has the commission, has your commission seen the maintenance plan and how this goes, to Chris's comments, this falls in line with the maintenance plan, this falls in line with the ADA requirements? And if those haven't been reviewed, I think this committee should at least see that content, to draw those dots. You're saying that that has been, the connection is there. I think it'd be important for us to understand that, because certainly I walk into this meeting with the fourth iteration of the same comments I've had previously, which is the $1 million price tag for one particular neighborhood project is pretty high, considering that there are, roughly 10 other playgrounds that are in a similar need and larger in some cases. And as we just reminding folks that the CPC budget is roughly 1 to 1.1 million per year. And out of that 1 million, or 1.1, we have to have carve-outs for the other three, or the two categories, if you will. So it's over budget for our budget. And the whole reason why CPA was even enacted was because there isn't money in other streams to fund these kind of projects to begin with, right? That's what the voters accepted, dipping into their pocketbooks in order to pay for CPA allowable projects. So, to say on one hand, okay, well, there's going to be some other funding source. If there had been one already, I think you would have identified that, because the need's always been there for 20 plus years of these playgrounds that have deteriorated over time. My concern is that and I really want to see concretely how this connects with the ADA requirements, and not just saying, oh, the entire every square inch of the playground has to be ADA accessible. Is there some level of the capability of scoping it down to where's the requirement? Because if I look at, let's say, for example, Beale, and I say, wow, that's a large rubber space. Is that truly a priority? Minimum priority in order to meet all constituents, the playground, those that use the playground, and those that, and also from a cost perspective. So I think that we have to balance that, because you look at it and say, okay, well, CPA only has, if you say greenlight this one project, then it comes into the maintenance side of it, because it's not going to be CPA funded. Do you really have maybe down the road over $1 million to renovate the thing, right? Because the rubber does deteriorate over time, and the structures do deteriorate over time. So passing this bar now to install this, do you have future funding to really pay for maintenance? Because we don't want to have our community go into the same spiral of saying, hey, we installed these playgrounds 20 years ago. We let them go so far that they have now need to be, removed and replaced completely, not just maintained, right? We don't want to see structures removed over time. We want to see things maintained.
I understand what you mean by maintenance now, right?
Yeah.
It's not just cleaning the park or such.
Right.
It's really maintaining it to the level we install it at.
Exactly.
And I think that's a question for not Kevin from Parks, but Kevin, the town manager, right? As to whether we are going to, it's like anything, right? It's the new police station. Do we have maintenance in there for that? It's the new potential DPW building that they're gonna put up. Is there maintenance in the budget for that? I mean, any capital investment like this, we should, right? Like your own home, fund to keep it up to date, so it retains its value and we get our cost benefit out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, Chris.
So if I might suggest, I'm happy to go get some more narrative and more detail on a specific maintenance plan that would be associated with this. Obviously, I don't have that on hand currently, but I'm happy to get that for the committee. What I would suggest in the meantime, I think, when we talk about maintenance and the level of investment that we're doing, on a small scale, just before the committee, we were looking at the lightning arresters for the church, and do we go with the full copper or the aluminum, right? And I think appropriately, the committee opted to spend a little bit extra money and go for the copper because of the maintenance need, the long-term viability of that. So what I would suggest is that I think this is what we're trying to recommend with this with this investment is that hitting that ADA accessibility and that maintenance needs, that the rubber versus some of the other what I would consider substandard surfacing, that has less long-term maintenance needs. Certainly, everything at some point will have to, be addressed and be maintained or redone. We're not suggesting that, but how, making that investment now so that it is more durable and long-lasting, and that doesn't need to be addressed as costly and as, in a shorter span of time is what we're looking to do and to achieve here. In terms of the ADA accessibility, I do want to, I'm happy to get some narrative around that as well. What I would again suggest is that, there's going to be the requirements that they have, and we do see a need for accessibility in our parks. That is a very key piece to what we're looking to achieve in our parks equipment. And so that means meeting or exceeding the ADA requirements where we can. So again, I think that this plan was developed with those needs in mind and speaks to that, and I'll be happy to get the committee some more narrative around more specifically what that is. So.
Yes.
I just want to put a clarifying point to my comments about ADA accessibility. And I'm not suggesting that, that it's not there. What I'm suggesting is, I'd like to understand what's the boundaries of what is an acceptable amount of ADA accessibility. So, for example, if this room was a playground, and all the equipment was where the community members are sitting, is it important for a rubberized surface in the back wall where there's no structures? And that's how I personally view, let's say the Beal Playground as an example. It seems to me that there's rubberized surface way further away from the structures. And I'm saying to myself, well, how is that corner utilized at all, other than just another space to, I want to understand that better, right? I'm not going to pretend I understand that, right? I just want to understand that better, because every square inch of the most costly surface is what's driving the price, right? I mean, certainly there's other things on their list, like example, there were cement walkways. Does it have to be cement? Could it be asphalt, right? I mean, I don't know what the pricing is. I mean, I'm not a design person, but is that a big driver? So, perhaps, I don't know if the folks that did the original design document, can they speak to a costs of services, longevity, maintenance? Otherwise, we'd be, if they can at least provide a narrative, that would be great. Somebody who's in the industry. So I think that would be very helpful.
Yes, Martha.
I have two comments. One, I'll start with the accessibility piece. I have not studied the plans in detail to think about what should be accessible and what shouldn't, but I want to bring into the picture the fact that there may also be adults with accessibility needs who may come with their children, and it would be good to think about how the whole area is to be used by all age groups as we're considering those questions of accessibility. And then the second piece, it struck me that we've really been thinking about this as a neighborhood playground because it's being driven by someone from the neighborhood who sees a need for the neighborhood. But I would like to expand our thinking a little bit, because if we have a state-of-the-art playground, it may be that other residents outside the neighborhood in the town are drawn to that because it is state-of-the-art and new and accessible. And so it may very well not just be, I don't want to limit it to a neighborhood playground. I think I want to see the whole larger potential of this to serve the entire town.
John?
Basically, I'm just going to add to that comment, because that was basically where I was coming from. My impression is, it being the newest and best playground, let's call it, it will draw people from outside the neighborhood, you know, which leads to my concern is there's really no parking there. People would have to park in, you know, the street would be lined with parking. Theoretically, there's no handicap parking spaces in case either a handicapped child or even a handicapped adult were to come there. And in my opinion, that should be required also, that a space be identified, even if it's along the street parking somewhere. Because even though we call it a neighborhood playground, it can't be limited to people that live in the neighborhood. It's a town-wide playground. You know, I thought that was going to become an issue.
I'll chime in. I have to agree with all the statements that have been made already, but I do have another issue that kind of bothers me, and that's that we had an assessment done, and we found out that town-wide, the playgrounds needed work. Doing this project is, I think it's valid and it needs to be done, but I think it sets a precedent for all the others as well. And are we going to be coming back every year with another playground to do and have the same issues that we're having now? Is there any thought to doing, you know, a capital like debt exclusion, you know, project where we deal with all the playgrounds at once, get them done? I think the public would value something like that as opposed to piecemealing, you know, playground by playground. That way we're kind of playing, you know, fairness with everybody. It was wonderful that this was brought to our attention and spearheaded this whole project, but I think it does set kind of a dangerous precedent, and we're going to be going through this with all the other playgrounds, because once this one's done, everybody's going to want that playground in their backyard too. So I'm just throwing that out there, that perhaps we need to look at a larger project as opposed to singling one playground at a time.
I think it speaks to a larger issue, though, too, that I think our fields townwide are kind of deficient. If you go look at SAC Park, it's a big space, but we have one turf field in the town of Shrewsbury, and that's at the high school. I'm the parent of two current college athletes, and they got their start playing in Shrewsbury youth sports. And when you went to other towns, and Shrewsbury's a comparatively wealthy town versus the ones we were playing, that when you went to other towns, they had better facilities than Shrewsbury. So, you know, whether it's a debt exclusion or something else, I know we're kind of going far afield of the CPC, but it's something just to keep in the back of everybody's mind why the town doesn't prioritize some of the youth athletics, because we spend a lot of money on it at the high school level.
That was built with private donations,
I
not
get it,
debt
but-
exclusion
yeah.
or town funding.
Right.
CPA could certainly be a part of a larger project, you know, in parts of it, but I just don't know how this committee could take on the constant desire for another playground or another large project like that. It's just not feasible. We don't have that kind of funding, and we can't just put it all in one pot. But there's a need out there, so the need is there, the desire is there, so maybe this is the opportunity to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to call out regarding debt exclusion. So it is possible, technically possible, that CPA could sponsor a bond on that. Obviously, it has to go through other channels too, but it is feasible if you wanted to get an efficiency of a larger effort across town.
John?
I mean, whether, I kind of like the debt exclusion idea. In fact, Colin and I had that conversation a couple of months ago on you know, leaving a meeting. And again, whether we do the debt exclusion from the committee in full or in part, I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of combinations here. let me give you an example, and I ran into this backwards. I have a group that plays golf every Thursday, and we played up at Stowe, and somebody said, oh, I thought Stowe Acres was sold. So I looked it up, and yes, it was sold. And in fact, the town bought the 36-hole golf course. And they're gonna eliminate one of the 18-hole courses and leave another 18-hole course. And within two 18-hole courses, there is a lot of wetlands. And it was funded in partly by the town, and partly by a bond issue from the CPC. And they paid the owner like $3.5 million to buy the whole 36 holes. They're gonna put, eventually the goal is to put some trails in there through the wetland area and to build some low-income housing on the area, on the holes. They're redesigning the place so they're not leaving one 18-hole golf course. They're kind of mixing and matching depending on the way the property sets up. So there will be an 18-hole golf course, like 14 holes from the old course plus the 4 new ones. And then they plan on doing all of this, a lot of it, not all of it, but being funded by CPC bond issue. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, this sounds like we're going right down that alley almost if we somehow put a plan together.
Gail?
Well, yeah, you see, on the coalition, you see those types of projects all the time. And towns and communities don't have that kind of money to do these huge projects. So it's obvious that that's the direction that they're going, you know, because they don't have millions of dollars in their CPA funds to put on one project. So that must be how they're funding them. So I don't see why we can't do the same thing somehow. It's like you say, just put a plan together and let's do it.
So it sounds like there's definitely, did you have something to say?
Just one point. I don't understand how that bond would work and how that would draw on our funds over a period of, say, 20 years. Would we be obliged to set aside a certain amount every year to pay that back?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, just so we understand, all right. I mean, and the size of the return every month or every year would be depending on the size of the project.
I mean, we, the committee, I'll just use some examples. We, the committee, could say, we're gonna set aside 200,000 a year, 300, pick a number. Whatever we decide we want to set aside. It would depend on the bond issue. And in fact, my conversation with Carl, I don't know if I want, I put Kevin on the spot here a little bit. Kevin, the town manager. Supposed to be the other Kevin. Basically, at the previous, I don't know if it was the annual town meeting, we voted for the new water treatment plant, and I think it was about $18 million. And somebody asked the question on Monday night, what would it cost us per year? And he came back with an answer on Wednesday. I guess the average of the first year would be, was it, I want to say it was somewhere between $280 to $400 per, for the average tax bill. And I don't remember the number, Kevin, that's why I'm kind of asking. But if it's, that project was 18 million, let's scale it back and say our project would be 6 to 8 million. So we might be looking at, if the town footed the entire bill, you're probably looking at $125 to $150 on the tax bill. Now, I don't know, at $8 million divided by 20 years, that's $400,000 a year plus interest. So maybe we kick in $200,000 or $250,000. I mean, you know, we'd have to sit, I assume what a separate committee would get together and put a proposal together. So we could be talking, off the top of my head, $250,000 a year commitment for 20 years.
I think you'd want to try to raise some private funds too.
That's a good area to raise private funds, yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities.
So it sounds like between now and Springtown meeting, there's a lot of questions, a lot of possibilities to be thrown around. It is a big project. You know, 100,000 of this is what we think of as playground. It's in the budget. It shows under $100,000 for playground structures. So there's probably a lot of public education about what does the other $900,000, by, and is all of that CPA eligible? I'd certainly be curious to hear what your public feedback sessions might yield for information. And I think every one of us would like to see a playground on Arrowwood Drive. And we'd like to see the right project that doesn't encumber all of our annual CPA funds, that is fair to other neighborhoods and to the community. And that happens, but I don't think we figured quite how to make it happen yet. You've got some great ideas about potential financing. So I think we just keep this on our agenda and keep asking questions, see what you can find for us. So I don't think there's any action to take on that tonight, for sure. Is there anything, Kevin Esposito, that you want to add? Or just keep filling us in? And
There's a couple of things I can address.
Okay.
So there's a difference between inclusive and accessible. Accessible, the standard is to get people to the structure. We want to be inclusive, that anyone can get to any of the structures. If you look at some neighboring playgrounds, they have certain areas that, because it's an adaptive swing, they only put a rubber walkway to that swing. The regular swings don't have that. They put wood chips under there. That's not where we want to go. We want the accessibility for anyone, any caregiver, any grandparent, like you were saying, to be able to get to any feature in that park. You also have to look at the equipment, and every piece of equipment has what they used to call a fall zone. Now it's called a use zone. So depending on the height, the size, that dictates what protective surface you have to have around that feature. And I'll use swing sets for an example because that's a big one. So if you look at a swing set, you very rarely see a tall one anymore because they take up so much space, because you have to take the height of from the ground to the top bar and go twice that in both directions, front and back. And then you need side distance. So an 8-foot swing, you need basically a 24 by 32 area, and that's all fall zone. So that explains why so much rubber. On the maintenance end, we're not in the position to send people out there to fill in gaps under swings on a daily basis. And that's why Massachusetts doesn't consider the engineered wood fiber as an accessible surface. And that's why if you look at some of our older school playgrounds, we were called out on that, and we had to add the rubber walkways. But at all times, that wood fiber that is there should be the same height as the rubber. You don't want to be falling off edges, and it just causes problems. And that's why we're looking for the most maintenance-free, if there is such a thing. We know we're going to have parts to replace on playgrounds, swings wear out, things get worn, chains and stuff like that. We understand all that, and that becomes part of our regular operating budget. So we know that this is part of everything, and that we need to look at that. We're also not saying that this particular playground is gonna start a cookie cutter effect for every other neighborhood. Our job, we feel, is to look at each neighborhood individually, and some places may be as simple as a naturescape. Maybe everyone doesn't want a 12-foot tower in their neighborhood. Those are all research things on our end as far as future planning. But in this particular case, we went with what we wanted to replace down there. And the other park-like stuff comes along with it. And I think it's all part of getting people, anyone down there, to enjoy it, even if you're just going to sit on a bench under a tree. If we provide that, then that's good for us. We're not looking at it as we just want to meet standards. There's no sense in that. We want to be above and beyond that, and if we set a precedent, so be it. But ultimately, it'll be up to Parks and Recreation to come up with the plan for the rest of these places. And, you know, I'm not gonna say that everything is gonna be on the same scale as this. You know, but this is what we're asking for this one. And I don't know if there's anything else I can answer, but.
I don't think anyone has any questions at this time. We appreciate you coming back again and again. Ms. McCann, is there anything you want to tell us, or are you good for now?
No, I'm good.
Okay. We'll continue these conversations. We'll get more information, and hopefully before the May town meeting, we'll have an action taken. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So our next order of business, our discussion items, the special town meeting presentation materials. Mr. McGoldrick, that's you.
Yep, thank you. So I included a draft memorandum in the meeting materials. I'm sure at this point the committee probably finds that memo largely familiar. What it does is it gives kind of a brief overview of CPC, as well as the articles that we'll be proposing to town meeting. We'll include the motions at the time that they're drafted. We do have a meeting on the 4th, which is before this memorandum goes out to town meeting members, so we're ahead of schedule on that. But I did want to put that memorandum, at least in draft form, before the committee to take a look at, see if there's anything additional that they'd like to see included in it, and we'll then circulate that for a final pass with staff before going out prior to town meeting. So we'll also work to incorporate the slides. Obviously, there's a pretty standard slide deck that's provided for town meeting, so I'll have some draft slides for that meeting on the 4th to include for the projects that we have. I have a couple of photos that were pulled from the application materials, and we'll fit that in the standard slide deck.
Are there any questions or comments for Chris about the special town meeting? The date of that is November 18th. Right. So next up, update from the CPC and Affordable Housing Trust Joint Working Group.
Yep.
Kathy, Jason?
We have had some scheduling difficulties with business and vacation travel, so I believe we're scheduled now for this Friday.
Yep.
So we'll have an update next time.
Okay.
We have not met since our last meeting.
Yeah, and so just a reminder of kind of where we left off. So we did develop a draft document and funding agreement with that joint working group that has been circulated to town council as well as other relevant staff and has been reviewed. So I just wanted to put that back before the working group before we present it formally to both the trust and the committee. But I think we're substantially there, just one last pass through, and so that will be another item that on our November 4th meeting I anticipate we'll be able to take up.
Okay. And how about the online application presentation?
Yeah, thank you. I have not had enough time to commit to this presentation, so I'd like to hold this one until the next meeting. But again, we do have a draft of our online application, which uses the OpenGov permitting system, which is all town departments utilize. So this would incorporate right into that system. But I want to make sure that I develop a presentation to really walk through that in more depth. So.
Planning board has been keeping Chris pretty busy.
All right. CPC signage.
So I'm happy to, or pleased to state that we have our CPA signs that have come in. I have one in the front here, so feel free to take a look at the end of the meeting. I'm happy to review them. We purchased 30 of those, so we have quite a few. We're not going to put all 30 out, but you'll see those starting to crop up around town as we place them out. Projects that either were funded or are to be funded in the near future. So those will start to be showing up around town.
So the committee, if you didn't get a chance to see it, it's, I believe, that on the table there. So that brings us to next steps. We've already half filled our agenda for the November meeting. And that is, where will the November meeting be? It's not here because of voting, is it? So I will ask myself several times before.
Thought we were at the library again.
Yep, we have it scheduled for the library.
Okay, excellent. Are there any other items, issues, questions? Yes, Gail?
I was just wondering, you know, we had our picture taken with the fire engine, and I was wondering how we want to proceed with publicity on that, whether it's been taken apart now, if you saw online that it's in pieces, but just to get some plan, you know, to get some CPA recognition. It's kind of a project will be ongoing, but we do have some photos and stuff of it, and I don't know how the board felt about putting it out there on the town's social media or whatever. I don't know if we're ready for the coalition website yet until the stuff is more complete, but just throwing it out there to see how you felt about that. At least it's in the works. Chris?
Yeah, it's a good point. I know we've really kind of started to generate materials. We've been getting some photos back from other projects, not just the fire truck. And so I think, you know, as we kind of close out some of these projects, we have some good items to highlight. I'm trying to book some time with staff to do a website refresh. We do this on most of our websites, kind of set aside that time to go through and see how we can better optimize that. So hopefully through this next month, I'll be able to at least kind of set some time aside. One of the things I'd like to do is do project pages where the materials are all kind of, or at least some of the materials that we receive are kind of presented. Just, you know, accessibility for town meeting members as well as we move into those spheres. So I want to make sure that we're presenting that information more accessibly like we do. So hopefully we'll start to get that.
I think it's
refreshed.
important that we're in the public eye as much as we can be, because that's the only way we're going to get projects coming forward is people know we exist, right? So one way of knowing we exist is by showing what we're doing.
It might be appropriate to reach out to one of the reporters from the Community Advocate. They could use some of those photos and perhaps talk to you or to us.
Sure.
Chris, do you have the group photo that, I don't know if you have, do you?
I do,
You have
yeah.
the group, okay, thanks.
Yes, Carl?
I just have a discussion point maybe for the future. When we get these new projects in and they're going through eligibility, is it something we should do to say, you know, this amount of funding is what's kind of palatable to us for these projects? I mean, I know we first had it with Prospect Park, right? $1 million, and it kind of didn't get to a discussion because of some of the features of it, right? But would this have, you know, save us some time and some aggravation as to letting people know at that point, right, before they go out to bid and what the design is going to be, you know, this is what's palatable to this committee for this type of project.
Sure, I mean, we certainly share, our budget is voted on annually at town meeting, and that is the extent of what we have, our approved budget. I don't know, we would have to decide what we think is palatable.
Well,
think that's
I guess, I don't
probably
know if that's
project by
a
project.
phase of us looking at eligibility and then even feedback to the applicant to say, this is great, we love it this much, or do we love it this much?
But we
right?
also have, it is our responsibility and we have the option when we are receive a request that's eligible, we don't have to fund the whole project. We can be asked, it's like negotiating with our children, we can be asked for $100,000, but we can decide, looking at the budget, that we feel in that particular cycle that $50,000 is an appropriate investment.
If the project is able to be handled at half price, to your example, then yes, otherwise it's really a rejection, right?
Could be,
Yeah, yeah, okay,
could be.
okay. Just a thought, just a thought.
I would hate to reject a project based on just the monetary aspect of it, because sometimes things evolve, you know. Okay, this is just like this playground project. Maybe too much for us to handle, but something else comes from that. Maybe a better project, a more streamlined project, whatever. But I think your point is well taken, that there could be some balance or some parameters. But I don't know that we want to say, you know, we don't think this is eligible because we don't have the money.
Perhaps it's something we're mindful of. I think we do talk to our applicants quite a bit, but something to be mindful of in those conversations, that this is technically an eligible project, but it sounds like it may be more than what our budget could bear.
Right. Right.
If that's a fair warning, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Carl, because, you know, I would say I voiced my opinion about the price tag during the eligibility phase, and I'm, you know, quickly reminded about this is an eligibility conversation and not about the price tag. However, I do recognize that, you know, every time we have a meeting, it's another month goes by, it's the applicants coming back, it's the, you know, staff coming back, and to talk about the same project. And I think that if the sentiment's already there, it should at least be known, because there's no point of moving, in my opinion, and generally, I don't think there's any point of wasting folks' time on a project that is going to be too large for the CPA budget or for whatever reason to move forward. So, yeah, I really do agree that I don't know about necessarily price tag, because I don't know how you can come up with a, you know, ballpark. However,
Yeah.
at least have the conversation. I think we should have at least a conversation about, hey, I think it can be eligible. However, it doesn't, you know.
Remind them of what our budget is annually. Sometimes people are motivated to find alternative funding or something creative like a bond.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure that, I don't know that we can we say it's not eligible just because we
No,
don't
no,
like it?
No.
I was
Say
never
no.
saying that. I was never saying it wasn't eligible. I'm just saying, great project, and, you know, I think we'd really love to see it, maybe give an opinion. We'd love to see it come in at $500,000, right?
Or be
Six-
mindful
yeah.
of we only have X annually to give, we can't wish money. We can
Well,
only spend
but
what we
I
have.
even think when you say annually, you know, we have $1 million annually, right? But it's not all for one particular project, right? So for whatever it is, and even to the point, like, we have some funds already committed to different projects, right? So really, whatever, a Parks project, we only have this much for fiscal '24 available at the moment,
Yep.
right?
I feel as if that's exactly what we did at our last meeting regarding this project. We said, no, $1 million is too much, we can't stomach it, but here we are again, having the same conversation.
But that was post-eligibility, right? Post-eligibility.
I mean, okay, I did say during eligibility,
Yep.
but I know our conversation has to be about eligibility.
I think eligibility with feedback we should do more of that. Because also, I think it depends on a given year.
And
what is being
even
asked
during
of us.
design time, right? We voted money in for design, right? Same thing with Prospect Park. I
Right.
don't know that we expected that to come out of Prospect Park, that dollar figure. Same thing with Arrowwood, right? Just trying to get the process smoother.
Well, and part of ultimately what their assessment did, what it was supposed to do, it told us that it was impossible to renovate or rehabilitate
Right,
the
right,
structure, that
right.
only building a replica, and at that point, the conversation had to end because we cannot build
Yep.
replicas. But the assessment did what it was supposed to do, it gave us a definitive answer on that.
Right.
I guess the comment I'll make on that is, the $2 million projects, okay, Prospect Park and the playground, basically came out of studies. We put money, $50,000 on the table for a study. Then the study started waving $1 million flags. So I think in terms of, do we put a limit on something? I'm guessing projects that big, more than likely are gonna require a study up front anyway. Somebody's not just gonna come down the pike and say, hey, I got a project here for $2 million, so should we bring it forward? I'm just guessing on that. I'm trying to think of what would, something like that happen, but I would imagine it would be a result of some analysis that says, you know, we wanna do something, I don't know, and then the project says, oh, this project's worth $2 million. So I guess at that point, we would have to say, well, you know, we don't know what we can do, you know, we can only spend 500 grand at that point. So I guess in that sense, go back to your initial point, putting a limit on something, you'd find out
It's
after
an
the
opinion.
study.
It's not a limit. It's an
Yeah.
opinion of what would be palatable to this committee,
Yeah.
is what it is, right? I'm not setting any limits. I want pie in the sky projects to come out. I want them to be beautiful. I want Shrewsbury to be beautiful. So I don't want to limit somebody with a dollar figure, right? But I want to set expectations, right? Set expectation, right? I think you said, you know, yes, this is very expensive, but there was no expectation of what might not have been so expensive. That's all. That's all.
We can certainly give those comments when we determine eligibility.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing a request and try to help shape that. We can certainly do that.
Well, yeah, I think if you looked on Google Drive, there's some projects out there that we haven't seen yet proposed, right? And if you looked at them, some of them are in this kind of price range, right, that haven't come forth yet, and I don't know how those are gonna go over either, right?
We'll ask for the big ones. We'll do what we can with the budget
Oh, yeah.
we have.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any other questions, comments? Anything that you'd like to see on the agenda for November, other than the items we've already discussed?
Can I just ask, Kathy, how your housing project on Elizabeth Ave is working out?
We had the engineer present at our last meeting, which
Yes.
was 4 weeks ago. And we're moving on to the next step, which he's gonna put together a proposal for us on really what our next steps are as far as feasibility and, well, we did the feasibility, so basically on, you know, preliminary designs, and we know we have to go through conservation and a number of things, so he's giving us a plan for our next steps, which hopefully we'll get tomorrow at our meeting.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions, discussions? We've completed our agenda.
Oh, my God.
Is there a motion
Jeez.
to adjourn? And we can stay and talk longer if you want, but
I'm not expected at home for another hour.
is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
you.
We will see you in November.
In November.
Like a nice group picture.
What's that?
Would you like